Now to an unbelievable story out of Fairfield that'll make you believe in being at the right place at the right time. Earlier this month, we told you about a local woman and her dog who were saved from a partially frozen pond. But as it turns out, there was a lot more to this rescue. News 12 Connecticut's Marissa Alter has their story.
Perry's Mill Pond is a favorite in Fairfield for dogs and their owners, including Melissa Miller.
I hike both my dogs, Oscar and Misty May, pretty much daily.
Friday, February 4th was no different. Despite bad weather, the trail was pretty empty.
I was heading back from my hike and met Lauren and her dog Cletus.
Lauren EFFRON had never crossed paths with Melissa until that day.
I remember just thinking, here's another brave woman out on a cold, rainy day walking her dogs.
After talking for a bit, the two women and their pets went their separate ways. Melissa was heading to the parking lot when Misty May ran out onto the frozen pond.
I was nervous and calling her to come back, and she literally looked at me and fell right through the ice. My fear was that she would go under the ice, and my instinct was, I have to help her.
Lauren was on her way back when she saw Melissa walk out onto the ice.
And I'll never forget the image of her falling in. And she screamed, and I said, I'm calling 911.
Now in the frigid water, Melissa tried to lift her dog onto the ice, but it kept breaking.
At that point, I was inhaling water. It was becoming very difficult to breathe, and I realized I had to think about myself.
Melissa is 7.5 months pregnant.
I basically just went onto my back and floated just to catch my breath.
200 yards away, at a house across the pond, Bridgeport firefighter Marcus Dierna and his wife were in the kitchen.
We looked out the window and saw some commotion and possibly somebody or something in the water. So my fire department training kicked in. I looked for a rope. I didn't have a rope. We grabbed a garden hose.
I saw movement, from the corner of my eye, and it was Marcus. I just saw him running, and I just screamed, bring a rope, and he had something on his shoulder.
Tied the garden hose that I had off to a tree and made my way out on the ice.
The next thing I know, this man gets Misty and I out of the water. I was completely numb, shaking, and all I could think about was my baby and if it was okay.
Fairfield firefighters and EMS arrived shortly after. While Melissa was rushed to the hospital, first responders rounded up her dogs, who were fine. Doctors confirmed mom and baby were too.
Marcus was honestly my guardian angel that day, and I don't know what would have happened had he not been there.
I was in the right place at the right time, and was happy to do it.
Back home, the events of that day are still surreal for Melissa and her husband.
Marcus literally saved my entire family that day. That morning started out as any normal day was, and I was quickly reminded of two things, and it was the fragility of life and the so-called comfort we have on a day-to-day basis, and more importantly, that there really are heroes in our community.
Not that Marcus will call himself one.
We sort of see this stuff all the time, and it's really just another day in our life. But when you get to meet the people on the other end, it sort of leaves an impression on you.
Oh my gosh, it's so good to see you.
A week later, in an emotional reunion, they met back at Perry's Mill Pond, the first time returning there since Melissa's rescue.
I'm just filled with relief and gratitude that it all turned out okay.
I've been overwhelmed by their reactions.
3 people, no longer strangers, now linked by a life-saving connection.
We've definitely formed this sort of bond, and I just feel so grateful.
In Fairfield, Marissa Alter, News 12, Connecticut.